The Universality of Islam. Universality and Equality. The principle of equality in dealing with people of different colors, socio-economic status and cultures is absent from the dominant ideologies of today's world. Indian society has suffered from a rigidly applied caste system for many centuries. Some people are looked at as gods, avatars, while others are treated little better than slaves. Although Christianity has seldom been applied as a system for living, it contains, among its contemporary teachings, doctrines that can be viewed as discriminatory. The Talmud, the basis of contemporary Judaism, considers the Jews to be privileged over all other people, the Gentiles. The list could be expanded to include the communist slogan of equality, all people are equal, then never practiced, which, in reality, means that some are more equal than others. Capitalism, as applied in several Western societies, is the communist slogan of equality, all people are equal, never practiced, which, in reality, means that some are more equal than others. Capitalism, as applied in several Western societies, is not geared theoretically to establishing equality, since it encourages division between the rich and the poor. Socialism, which in theory is supposed to ameliorate the excesses of capitalism and communism, successfully highlighted the inherent weakness of communism and capitalism. Not geared theoretically to establishing equality, since it encourages division between the rich and the poor. Socialism, which in theory is supposed to ameliorate the excesses of capitalism and communism, successfully highlighted the inherent weakness of communism and capitalism. Yet, could not prove itself as a more viable alternative. Of all the existing ideological systems, only Islam remains the only option that appeals to all because it respects the rights of all people and regards all humans as members of one nation living under God, Allah, in peace and harmony. In spite of their many differences, historical and contemporary evidence stand as witness to the non-negotiable Islamic equality. 1. Christianity and equality. In this section, I will examine some of the teachings of Christianity in order to determine if such views could appeal to all people regardless of their differences. To be objective, reference will be made to the Book of Christianity, the Bible, to document whether the message of Christ, PBUH, was for the world or limited in time and space to his people, the Israelites. Hence, it does not have a universal appeal. According to Matthew, the message Jesus, PBH, received was limited to one nation. Jesus, PBH, stated clearly in his instructions to his disciples that they were not to spread the message beyond the tribes of Israel. Go not into the way of the Gentiles, and into any town of the Samaritans enter ye not, but go rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Matthew 10:5, 6. Another incident narrated about Jesus, PBH, further illustrates the point in question. Leaving that place, Jesus withdrew to the region of Tyre and Sidon. A Canaanite woman from the vicinity came to him, crying out, Lord, Son of David, have mercy on me. My daughter is suffering terribly from demons' possession. Jesus did not answer a word. So his disciples came to him and urged him, Send her away, for she keeps crying out after us. He answered, I was sent only to the lost sheep of Israel. The woman came and knelt before him. Lord, help me, she said. He replied, It is not right to take the children's bread and toss it to their dogs. Matthew 15:21-26. In these biblical excerpts, Jesus, PBH, has clearly stated that his message was to be spread among the people of Israel only and not to the people of all nations. However, as a Muslim who believes that Jesus Christ, peace be upon him, was a great messenger of Allah, I am convinced that Jesus never said the underlined quote from the Bible, Matthew 15:26. Hill and Cheadle, 1996, mentioned that colored people have been mistreated throughout the history of people of European descendants. Western European tradition has generally segregated blacks and throughout history, moving their roles and contributions into the background or omitting them completely. Though the prophets of God can never preach hatred or discriminations, the continuous additions to the Bible by different groups to manipulate its teachings for their own interests. Some passages denote discriminatory sense. And Miriam and Aaron spoke against Moses because of the Ethiopian woman whom he had married, for he had married an Ethiopian woman, Numbers 12:1. Such excerpts from the Old Testament might explain the discriminatory treatment against the Jews of an African origin in the state of Israel. The feeling of discrimination among the African Christian American led to the reactionary feeling of some predominant Afro-American clergy. On Good Friday, 1993, Archbishop George Augustus Stallings Jr. of Washington, D.C., burned an image of a white Jesus in the street as he proclaimed its historical inaccuracy. Jesus was an Afro-Asiatic Jew. 9. To realize the extent the level of racism in the world's most powerful country, there are around 327 white supremacy groups in the U.S. 2. The Jewish position towards other nations. As we will see in this second Tion, the true unashamedly discriminatory nature of Judaism means that it cannot be nominated as a universal system for all humankind to follow. Despite its nature, or perhaps even because of it, the Jewish lobby is very powerful and plays a very effective role in shaping US foreign policy, especially those in Israel's interest. The Jewish Book of Qur'an, the Talmud, the preeminent authority for the Jews, 11 ranks them above all other people. Jews are considered to be the chosen people of God. They are supreme, and the multitude Gentile, non-Jewish, surrounding them are considered unclean and subhumans. The reason that Jews claim selected by God and the Gentiles as unclean is that the Jews were present at Mount Sinai, but Gentiles were not. When the serpent came into Eve, he infused filthy lust into her. When Israel stood in Sinai, that lust was eliminated, but the lust of idolaters, who did not stand on Sinai, did not cease. Avodah Zarah 22b. Let's look in the Zohar, where the Jewish rabbis interpreted the verse from Genesis, "Now the serpent is more subtle than any beast of the field." Their interpretation is, more subtle that is towards evil, than all the beasts, that is, the idolatrous people of the earth. For they are the children of the ancient serpent which seduced Eve. Zohar 1:28b. As a matter of fact, non-Jews, Gentiles, whether Christians, Buddhists or Hindus, are not considered equal to the Jews in any way. The Jewish doctrine regards them as if they were non-humans. The following excerpt from the Talmud would make anyone puzzle over the way they disparage other people. A Gentile is not a neighbor in the sense of reciprocating and being responsible for damages caused by his negligence, nor does he watch over his cattle. Even the best Gentile laws were too crude to admit of reciprocity. Beck, 13b. See how this conflicts with the true sense of justice in the Qur'an. O ye who believe, stand out firmly for Allah, witness in justice, and let not the hatred of others make you depart from justice. Be just, that is nearer to piety. And fear Allah, for Allah is well acquainted with all that you do. Quran 5:8. Christians and other non-Jews, called heathens in the Talmud, were not exempted from the hatred and the distrust of Jews. Where a suit arises between an Israelite and a heathen, if you can satisfy the former according to the laws of Israel, justify him and say, "This is our law." So also if you can justify him by the law of the heathens, justify him and say, to the other party, "This is your law," but if this can't be done, we use subterfuges to circumvent them. Baba Kama 113a. The Jewish Encyclopedia summarizes opinions of the sages about this law by stating, the Mishnah declares that if a Gentile sues an Israelite, the verdict is for the defendant. If the Israelite is the plaintiff, he obtains full damages. There are numerous citations in the Talmud where non-Jews are considered dirty or unworthy of living. It goes to the extent that such people are not even worthy of being accepted in their religion, even if they so desired. In fact, the Talmud prohibits, under the threat of death, the teaching of the Torah to any Gentile. Hence the Talmud prohibited the teaching to a Gentile of the Torah. The inheritance of the congregation of Jacob bar Johanan declares if one dared to do so, such a person deserves death. Certainly such a system, with its extreme discriminatory nature, was not designed to be a universal way of life. Many Israeli leaders do not value the lives of non-Jewish people. Menachem Begin's response to the world outrage over massacres in Sabra and Shatila refugee camps in Lebanon is reflective of this attitude. Goyim, meaning Gentiles, are killing Goyim and they came to hang the Jews. Some might say that current Judaism is not built on such radical or racial ideas. Let's listen to the defense of the leading Israeli authority as to what they have done in Lebanon. One is really stunned by the Talmudic manner in which they spoke. An example of this was seen in the way Begin arrogantly informed the Americans about the massacre he had committed. We have no duty to explain our actions to others, only to ourselves. In other words, the Jew is above criticism by a Gentile. Observing the occupying Zionist policies against the Palestinians reveals the real nature of the extreme brutality and hatred they have against children, women and helpless old people. Israeli officials have become candid in their rejection of the Gentiles' law when not favoring the Jews. After the decision by the International Court of Justice that construction of the partition wall was against the international law, Yusuf Lapid, Israel's justice minister, told a state-controlled radio on July 10, 2004 that Israel would pay attention to the ruling of the Hague-based ICJ. "We will heed the ruling of our Supreme Court, not the ruling of ICJ." This is the typical Talmudic Zionist view of contempt for everything non-Jewish. The whole world is always wrong. The tens of UN resolutions condemning Israel are not fair. The many bloody and inhuman massacres in Palestinian camps are just for self-defense. Bombing UN-run refugee camps and killing indiscriminately is a Zionist right. Mistreating and even constant killings of journalists and peace activists are just unintended mistakes, etc. This attitude is not confined to politicians. Moshe Antelman of Rehovot, Israel, a rabbi and a chemist, developed a bullet containing pork fat. Antelman, a rabbi and a chemist, developed a loud-laden ammo for use against devout Muslims, who believe any contact with pig flesh robs the soul of its chance to enter paradise. 18 The good rabbi has offered his innovation to West Bank settlers, and he also hopes to interest the Pentagon in this refined form of military pork. The Zionist nature of hatred for other nations and the complex sense of superiority have led them to direct their guns to their closest allies, the Americans, and kill many soldiers, as exemplified by their savage attack on the American Navy ship Liberty, in mid-May. In an interview with the prominent Jewish-American thinker and MIT linguist, Professor Noam Chomsky responded to a question about the Jewish view of other people by saying, "If you go back to traditional Jewish culture in either Eastern Europe or North Africa, being a Christian, a non-Jew, was a different species, below the level of Jews. For example, Jewish doctors are not supposed to treat non-Jews unless Jews can gain by it. So Maimonides 21 could be the doctor for the Sultan because Jews would gain by it, but not otherwise." When the following question was addressed to Chomsky, "Is this canonical or a cultural tradition?" he said, "It's in the halakha, the rabbinic tradition. There's plenty of stuff like this." They, the Jews, were on the one hand an oppressed minority, but on the other hand very racist. The racism carried over when they became a non-oppressed majority. The preceding section focused on the Jewish view of other nations. The author depended heavily on Judaic sources that have left out that discriminating against other people was an ideological and a religious duty of Zionist Jews. Since Jewishness is only inherited, other people of any nation can never be part of it. Other people are excluded and can never be part of that narrow system that favors Jews over all other nations, for no reason but because they are Jews.